Welcome back to the Long War of the Chosen Class Guides. Sorry for the delay of episodes there, but we're back. We have two more of the regular classes to go through, hero classes, and then also some other guides still coming up. Now, today we're going to look at the Assault, and similarly to some other classes, I wanted to condense this down. I think in the last guide we were still looking at 3 distinct specs, which weren't really all that distinct, so we're going to trim it down to one simple choice. In the Sergeant row, are you picking Killer Instinct, or are you picking Stun Gunner? And so then, of course, one of those is our Killer Instinct Assault. And obviously, all assaults are not really fantastic officers. Just to put that out there. Killer Instinct basically is kind of the defining factor here, where when you activate Run and Gun, your critical hits deal 50% more damage for the rest of the turn. The wording has been clarified, so it's now clear that when you critical hit, your whole attack does 50% more damage. I think the old wording was still saying like 50% more critical damage, so people thought only the critical part of the damage was increased, but no, you do an insane amount of damage with this. Now, this is all tied to the Run and Gun cooldown, of course, so you're gonna have it once, maybe twice per mission. But this is basically what your main damage dealer assault brings to the table here. Also, one of the big changes, of course, with 1.2 is that we no longer have lightning reflexes early available. And instead now we have a baseline skill called Dedication. Gives you some extra mobility, and it basically gives you Shadow Step. Ignore reaction fire for the rest of the turn. Which is kind of, in a way, for the soldier themselves, it's better than lightning reflexes, because it's just completely ignoring the effect is better than reducing the chance of getting hit. That's for sure. And it allows you then also to really get in on enemies that have close combat specialist or blade storm, all that kind of stuff. So, and of course the extra mobility is always welcome. You know, assault needs to get in there. So there is basically, I think when I press the dedication button, 75% of the time it's because I want to get 2 extra mobility, and 25% of the time it's because I need to ignore overwatch or reaction fire or similar effects. Now, what about the rest of the perks? Get ready for a whole bunch of blue. So I think there's a lot of choices you make, and then choices early in the tree might influence your choices later in the tree here. So, and even with this whole smattering of blue squares here that I put on the table, I still think there are some perks that might not have a box around them, but could potentially be viable. Let's go through the different trees here. So, Lance Corporal, Slugshot. It's a really nice early game drone killer. Since it gives you a shotgun, 2 armor piercing. Well, turns out drones at the start of the game have 2 armor. You also get a flat 10% to hit chance on the shot. So even if you don't need the effect that you no longer have range penalties, even shooting an enemy right next to you, well, I guess right next to you, you shouldn't have hit problems anyway. But hey, this is 10 extra hit. It also, I think in the past it used 2 ammo, now it only uses 1 ammo. So it saw a significant number of buffs, and it's no longer just the meme thing that you can occasionally use and then it disappoints you. So it's a really solid ability. Lone Wolf, some extra aim, which as an assault is fairly easy to take advantage of, because if you run and gun in there into the enemy groups right next to enemies, you get that extra aim. At the same time though, you don't necessarily need the extra aim, because shotgun gets so much bonus aim for being point blank next to an enemy, you might not need it. Of course, the defense is also there to help you keep you a little bit more alive, So this is more something where if I'm really rolling a low aim assault, then I might consider Lone Wolf just to boost that a little bit. In terms of, by the way, in terms of stats, I don't think there's much here in terms of stats that would sway me one way or the other. Whether I build a killer instinct or a stun gun assault. It's more like what I want, what my squad needs right now, what the barracks needs, and maybe even a little bit looking at XCOM role perks, which we're gonna do later. I think everything else stat-wise can be fixed. Of course, you know, higher aim kind of leans more into stun gun because stun gun is of course very binary, as you need to hit the enemy to actually get the stun effect, and you can't compensate it just by gunning next to them and shooting a shotgun to their face with a high aim bonus, because you don't get that high of an aim bonus. Anyway, next role, Corporal. Hang on, one more thing to Lance Corporal. I think you could make an argument for Electroshock even on a Killer Instinct assault. You know, that's some decent utility, disorient an enemy on a miss. But I think it's kind of... I didn't want to just have, you know, everything painted blue here and tell you do whatever you want. Of course, you should do whatever you want, but I think let's trim it down to 2 choices on most ranks, and I think this is kind of for a Killer Instinct type assault the weakest choice. Now, coming to Corporal. There's the Trench Gun as your little AoE, and there is Close and Personal. Close and Personal is kind of the, in my opinion, better choice here, because with Killer Instinct being your focus, right? Your critical hits do 50% more damage. You need some additional critical strike chance, which in a standard tree you can only get from Close and Personal and from Aggression. Those are only perks giving you crit chance. Otherwise, you have your 40 crit chance from flanking an enemy. You've got 20 from the shotgun itself, and you can get 10 from a good laser sight, top-end laser sight. Well, I guess technically you can get more than 10 if you have the continent bonus, but you know, let's not get lost in detail. So you need to make up somewhere for extra 30 crit if you want that guaranteed crit chance. That can be something like Close and Personal, that can be Aggression, that can be, you know, then depending on XCOM row, something like Predator, giving you extra crit chance. So it's a little bit of a look what you have in XCOM row and then make the decision here on based on that. Trench Gun is kind of situational. I do like to have at least one Trench Gun assault fairly early, because they're really good and really helpful in the Network Tower mission to kind of help clear out all the enemies while they're stunned. It seems always a little bit weird, you know, bringing up this argument that there's a single mission in the game, and that's why I built one soldier this way. But getting that first liberation done, getting your steady income for the campaign, I feel is important enough that building one soldier for this specific mission, you know, like your stealthy shinobi, you can get through and hack the objective, and your trench gun assault, who can clear out 1 or 2 groups of enemies on his own. I think that's worthwhile for that mission. Usually I wouldn't build, you know, I don't know, if it said, oh, this build is really good in the chosen stronghold assault against the hunter or something like that. I'm not sure building around that is a good choice, but in this case, picking up Trench Gun is really good, because I mean, Trench Gun is also good for other missions, right? It's an ambush tool for any mission if you can get in position. Positioning is the big key, and I know that's a little bit of a topic on its own. How to position yourself that enemies potentially walk not into you and reveal you, but close enough so that you can get a good trench gun off. Again, can be helpful also with certain XCOM perks to get close enough for some nice trench guns. Alright, Killer Instinct we talked about. core perk here for the Killer Instinct Assault. Now, in the past, I would have probably said, if you pick Killer Instinct, you want to pick extra conditioning, right? Reduced run and gun cooldown, so you get Killer Instinct more often. It seems like a no-brainer. Now, from my play experience, on your standard guerrilla operations, I kind of very rarely get to use run and gun. Even with extra conditioning, I very rarely get to use it more than once. You know, you kind of hold back against the first group, and then maybe against the second group, you run and gun in there and kill a lot of guys. And then by the time you fight the final group, it's not off cooldown yet, even with extra conditioning. So I know it's good, but I feel like you also you can get by without it. And often nowadays, if I have somebody where I go trench gun, I might just pick up aggression here to make up for the lack of close and personal. I think having a more reliable crit is more important than potentially getting an extra run and gun off in one mission and not in another one. Right, Tech Sergeant. This is probably a role that I mention whenever I'm playing in a campaign, how this is like a tough choice, right? The obvious choice, or the choice that jumps at you, is to say, okay, I'm gonna go rapid fire because this is the only one I can use on a run and gun turn, right? Run and gun cannot be used on the same turn as close encounters or hidden run, for that matter. So obviously you go run and gun, rapid fire, so you can get the full Killer Instinct value. Well, damage with Killer Instinct is so high that in my experience, often the second shot of rapid fire doesn't even fire, because the first shot already kills the enemy. That being said, rapid fire is still really good, and you know, taking out those big targets. The downside for me is a little bit that you lose some flexibility. I feel like close encounters, for me, it's the primary pick, because I think it's more flexible, because I can get in there and then shoot two different targets. And if I have the damage numbers, I can also kill those two targets. So that seems more flexible. And I can still shoot twice at the big boy target, as long as I can get close enough. And I think like if you're more than 4 tiles away from the enemy, shotgun hit chance will also kind of start to screw you over. And if you then get the additional 15 aim penalty from rapid fire, you're gonna have a rough time. I still, definitely say rapid fire is not a bad choice. You can take it. For my playstyle, I just prefer the flexibility of close encounters. One caveat maybe is that, of course, close encounters requires you to get close to the enemies without using run and gun. Right? It doesn't work together. So you need a certain mobility on your soldiers to actually take advantage of that. So if I rolled a really low mobility soldier, 14 is kind of low, 13 is the lowest you can roll at the start of the game, that might lean more towards rapid fire, because I'll be running gunning more often. Like, this is kind of where stats maybe influence some perk choices. Let's say you roll 13 mobility, but you want to go shooty Killer Instinct Assault, then I would say, yeah, get extra conditioning, get rapid fire, because you're going to be run gunning a lot because you're slow. Now, the third perk, briefly worth mentioning, hit and run. It's like, it's great, we talked about this on the Shinobi. It's a great offensive perk, but requiring a flank shot already means you can't get the second shot against any sort of unflankable targets. Your all melee targets, mechanicals, etc. Yeah, so you're better off if you want this kind of double shot experience here with close encounters. Now, you have the flexibility that you get more range, but in order to get more range, we're then again dealing with shotgun range penalties. Now, back in the day, I don't know, 5 years ago, in Long War II times, I occasionally built assault rifle assaults, and they would get hidden run and be able to, take these long-range shots, and basically a stun gunner with an assault rifle take a hit and run to basically never get close to the enemy. But I feel like that's kind of, the assault is your big damage dealer, and that's you're kind of losing your main focus of the class, and that. So I don't think hidden run is a really good pick here anymore. Anyway, moving on to Gunnery Sergeant, and after much deliberation, there's no box around lightning reflexes. Like, if you manage to get through the game until that level without severely missing lightning reflexes, then you're not gonna need it anymore going forward. There's not suddenly an influx of more overwatching stuff later on. You still have your dedication, and most importantly, you have, hopefully, your specialists in the team with interference that can clear any stuff. And even then, once you're at Gunnery Sergeant and the rest of your barracks is at Gunnery Sergeant, you probably have even more tools to handle overwatching enemies. So in that case, you can pick up some utility perks. Now, for me personally, I always go with Untouchable. But I also know that some people really swear on Close Combat Specialist and say it's amazing. This is one of the cases where I'm like, I've not played with it or haven't made it work for me, so I don't want to comment on that. So I don't want to say it's a bad perk. I just really like Untouchable as an additional tool. So really just, I think we talked a little bit about Untouchable and some other classes where don't rely on it, just having a soldier stand on the open with 6 enemies still alive. Untouchable won't do anything. But in the right situation, it can be really useful. My classical example would be, this allows you, with a single assault, to pretty much solo an Andromedon. You run and gun in there, rapid fire, if you have it, the Andromedon, kill it, it turns into the mech in phase 2, but you're standing there now untouchable, the thing attacks you because they will always attack what's next to them, and then in the following turn, you take it out. Or, you could even have an extra turn there, you run next to the Andromedon, kill somebody else that's nearby, untouchable against the Andromedon, then kill it the following turn, untouchable against the shell, and then take on the shell. So it's kind of these, they can have a little sideshow fight with individual enemies. It also is a little bit of an extra safety layer against enemies with yellow alert shots, all the good stuff. Close Combat Specialist. So what doesn't work here for me mostly is that, hang on, before I say something, we're still at each shot costing 2 ammo here, and I really like to give my assaults autoloaders. For the simple reason that, for me, they're kind of the guys that allow me to ignore codex, and we get codex bubbled, whatever. The assault has an autoloader and can take care of the codex where everybody runs around reloading. So I only usually have 4 shots in my shotguns. Anyway, probably have used 1 or 2 so far, so I would only get 1 CCS shot off. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't like to bad talk the perk because I haven't taken it in a while, because I'm just like, this is not the playstyle I want to rely on like random reaction shots within 4 tiles. Ideally, I don't want to leave enemies alive within 4 tiles to begin with. So if you're a CCS enjoyer, please share your experiences in the comments. There's been, by the way, if you're one of the early viewers, go back to the other videos, read the comments from everybody else. There's so many great perspectives and additional ideas there. Absolutely worth it, and thank you all for sharing your thoughts on these kind of guides. All right, moving on. Master Sergeant. More damage or a second AoE? I think I really want to pick Street Sweeper if I already have Trench Gun. It's kind of exclusive. They kind of fulfill the same role. Street Sweeper is, of course, bigger AoE, gets bonus damage to unarmored targets. Now, I gotta say, bonus damage to unarmored targets once you reach Master Sergeant is kind of very meh, because lots of targets, there's a dark event that gives all advent units 1 point of armor. So against your most common enemy, Street Sweeper is not gonna get that bonus damage. So late game, when we're talking unarmored targets, we're talking Vipers, Archons. Yeah. It's a very short list. Now, of course, if you want to use it for an ambush situation. If you just rocketed, shredder gunned a bunch of enemies and they're standing there, and then you run and gun behind them, so you flank them all and literally sweep the street, and it's like a single attack Reaper chain to just clean up all the rest. That's great, but then you also probably don't need the bonus damage against unarmored targets to begin with. But it can be good fun. It's always nice to get a good Street Sweeper in a campaign. The more reliable perk is just the good old lethal. 2 additional points of damage, 1 additional point on critical damage, and then of course multiplied here 50% extra on your Killer Instinct turn. This is really that makes sure you get your kills. Now, if you like, there is chain lightning can also be good if you don't have the extra hit chance. So maybe if you have a good aim roll, it can be worth taking occasionally. I just think you're missing out on so much with lethal, on so much reliable killing power, that I'd rather take lethal here. Alright, let's look at what I consider a stun gun assault, also then with the additional note here that I haven't actually built a stun gun assault in quite a while. But let's see what I consider a stunner build. Alright, let's go look at the stun gunner. One last thing though on the Killer Instinct. One thing I kind of forgot to mention, and I want to throw in there. Killer Instinct, the bonus damage when you have run and gun active. You don't need to actually run and gun anywhere. There's been a situation where I, for the initial concealment ambush, sit in a spot, trigger run and gun, just to get the bonus damage on my trench gun or my Street Sweeper. But that's less of a build thing, but more of a playstyle thing. Anyway, stun gunner. Again, I'm kind of really saying assaults are flexible, and there's only 2 perks I consider essential for a stun gunner build, and we could even argue about one of them. So the core perk here is obvious stun gunner, giving bonus chance to hit, and that is a significant additional hit chance that I would absolutely require to get a reliable stun gun result. The other core perk for me here would be Chain Lightning. If we have the extra chance to hit, we can disable and control a whole bunch of enemies. Now, it's no longer as overpowered as it was in Long War 2 days, where you could literally Chain Lightning the whole map, 20 targets, no problem. It is limited in its AoE and number of targets, but you know, if you take out 5 targets, and especially late game, let's say you have a tier 3 stun gun, taking out 5 targets for 2 turns, that's basically something that can win you a mission. Just flat out. Keep in mind though, I mean, not just relevant for chain lightning, but also for stun gunning in general. Our favorite friend, the elite priest and his dreaded anti-mind effect aura will remove any sort of stuns. So don't try to, you know, chain lightning a group that has an elite priest in its middle, or anyone close to a priest. Take out that priest first, and then use your stun gun. So with these perks being basically the core, then there's a whole bunch of choices again for the other perks. And a lot of it boils down to what we just talked about, so I'm not going to just repeat myself again. I guess the biggest change is, of course, then if you're going for stun gunner build, then the stun gunner perks in Lance Corporal and Corporal role are, of course, relevant choices, but I don't think they're required for a stun gunner build. Especially like the Electroshock, Disorient on a Miss. Yeah, that's nice and all, but you know, on the one hand, you don't really. It kind of is a Hail Mary against an enemy that's in cover, right? You just, I guess I can disorient him, but Flashbang does the same thing. This is kind of one of those perks where it also loses value as your gear and your levels progress, and you get higher aim, and you're just gonna miss less often. Keep in mind that the bonus chance to hit from stun gunner increases with higher tier stun guns, arc throws. So I'm not a huge fan of Electroshock, but I definitely see it as a viable perk for a stun gunner build. Similarly, Arc Bullseye. Arc Throw can now damage mechanical enemies and reduce their hack defense. I think damaging mechanical enemies is kind of a niche that's not really a niche, because there's a lot of people that are very good at it. I don't need my assault to also help with that. Like, I have my rangers that can just eat mechanical enemies for breakfast. I've got my gunners for the big heavy mechanical enemies that do a lot of damage. My specialists all have combat protocol now in 1.2, or chaining jolt even, or maybe even capacitor discharge. Like, mechanical enemies have so many threats on the XCOM side that they should be hiding. Do I need another perk to help me with mechanical enemies? Probably not. The exception would be if you're really going for some sort of hacky squad build, right? Where you have like your Grenadier with blue screen bombs, and you have your Arc Pulsar assaults, and you're trying to kind of stack hack defense decrease to get like your full override specialist to get that sector pot. You're not gonna get a sector pot, but you know, try to full override that super heavy mech and swing the mission around. I'm honestly not 100% sure. I think the current state of hack defense stacking is that the different effects stack, but the same effect doesn't stack multiple times. So you can Arc Pulsar, blue screen bombs, red screen rounds on enemy, but you can't fanfire red screen rounds for somebody for like huge hack reduction, and then have 3 assaults, all with Arc Pulsar, also reduce the hack defense. I think fairly certain each source of hack defense reduction only applies once. So, bit of a niche situational build, I want to say. The other perks, of course, you know, you're still an assault, you still have run and gun, so getting some additional base damage increases is nice, even though you're, of course, giving up on the big damage turn of Killer Instinct and Extra Con. Staff Sergeant, I kind of then say, look, you know, if you're not super keen on the super high crits that you get from Killer Instincts, and maybe a little bit defense from Formidable, it's not a terrible choice. But probably is. Like 99% of the time, I would say, nah, take aggression. You're still a damage dealer, first and foremost. Like, don't get me wrong, formidable is a good perk. True bonus ablative is actually kind of huge. It's like the difference between, you know, your alloy plating that you have for most of the campaign and something like then the carapace plating, which you only get from mutant elites very late. So you're jumping 2 tech levels basically in terms of your defense, and of course the reduced damage from explosives. It's not bad. It's not a bad perk, but keep in mind you're giving up some of that killing potential. Rapid fire, close encounters, hit and run. Same points apply that we talked about on the Killer Instinct Assault. So, and pretty much here, Gunnery Sergeant, also same things apply. Like, there's also nothing in these 3 rows that are specific for the stun gunner. So it's mostly the same things we mentioned before, with the main difference that, of course, well, I guess now extra conditioning is not completely useless, but, you know, the payoff, the big payoff turn is not there. So you could even take that on a stun gunner. You could. Now, alright, I think with that all being said, we're gonna head over to the wiki, look at the different XCOM row perks, and also how they might influence your perk chances. Although, keeping one thing in mind here, that especially for the assaults, it's always worth considering that you have the pistol row. And if you're getting in close and personal with your shotgun, that gives you opportunity to get some good pistol shots off. So, I probably won't mention it. I probably will mention it again once we're in the looking at the XCOM perks, but I want to point it out. This is really some good stuff, and especially, you know, that might be another argument for something like close encounters. You move in, you take a shot with a shotgun, and then you take 3 shots with fanfire, or a lot of shots with face-off. Definitely some good opportunities here. Since you're close to the enemies, the pistol aim isn't that bad. Decent choice there. So keep in mind, lethal is primary weapon only, so it does not apply to pistols. Alright, let's head over to the wiki. Alright, let's take a look at the XCOM row perks. And I think we're gonna start off with looking at all the Arc Thrower specific perks here, and whether or not those would be enough to make you go, hey, I want to build this into a stun gun assault. I think the biggest candidate here is, of course, the tier 4 perk, Quick Zap. Activates ability to make your next Arc Thrower shot a 3 action. This is really fantastic for, you know, moving out there, quick zapping, stunning somebody, and then moving back into cover. Basically a little bit of a hit and run Arc Thrower thing, and this could really, I haven't seen that in a while, otherwise this would really shove me into the Arc Thrower direction. Really allows you to still do a lot of damage with your shotgun and then occasionally quick zapping some enemies. That's a really nice one. Then we have unlimited power. Firing your Arc Thrower no longer ends your turn. This is a little bit questionable one, because, you know, how often am I at the start of my turn in a position where I want to Arc Thrower and then do something else, and rather still have a good chance to hit somebody with that Arc Thrower? It might be then a thing of, you know, if you want to go for the perk that allows you to target mechanical units, because hey, they are not in cover, you usually have a good hit chance against them, then maybe unlimited power might be your choice, where you zap a mech and then you can still trigger run and gun, move forward and shoot somebody else in the face with your shotgun. So in general though, this is kind of in my experience, or, you know, for my you know, games, I can't say in my experience, because as I said, I haven't built a stun gunner assault in a very long time, I really don't get much value out of this, I think. Then here in the tier 1 row, we have Arc Welder. Can use Arc Throw to heal friendly mechanical units. If you're running a whole bunch of sparks, this could be really nice, although sparks can also kind of self-repair, and even if they're not repaired at the end of a mission, they have a very, very short, well, I mean, even if you repair them, it won't affect their recovery time, even though they have a short recovery time to begin with. It's kind of, it's a 10-point perk. You know, for a 10-point perk, that's not terrible if your squad can support that. Also, of course, kind of makes sense then in that case if you have a hacker with full override who can take over that heavy mech, and then you can patch them up a little bit. That is, you know, it's okay, I guess. For 10 points, I can see some situations if, you know, the other conditions are met. Of course, you will get no value out of it if you don't have sparks and you don't have a hacker, because you usually have very few mechanical units on your team in that situation. Then we have Light Lightning. When Running Gun is activated, your Arc Throw cooldown is reset to 0. That's actually a decent perk for 10 points. So if you really need to, if you used your Arc Throw last turn and now this turn you really need to stun something halfway across the map, Run and Gun, cooldown is reset, run over there, stun him. You could also, I guess, combine that with Quick Zap, where you Quick Zap one target, then trigger Run and Gun, resetting your cooldown, and then zap a second target. So there's definitely some synergy here between those two perks, making it really strong in terms of Arc Throw support. Other perks that might influence my perk choices. I think this is all the Arc Throw stuff we have here. That's close enough. Anyone that gets close to it, it's Arc Thrower Bladestorm. Now, this is kind of a, if it actually still works the way it's advertised here, shares cooldown with the Arc Thrower stun ability. So if you used your Arc Thrower to stun somebody, you will not get any that's close enough shots during your turn. I think it's a little bit expensive for 35 AP. I think you can probably find something else, because generally Assault XCOM rule perks are really good. I'd be very surprised if you can't find something better, but it is a good defense. Let's just say it kind of gives you combatives for your assault in a way. Protects you from melee attacks, from, you know, your stun lancers, your chrysalids, etc. The only thing is really the shared cooldown and it not being available if you stun somebody, if it works like this. I don't think I've ever seen this or taken this in a long time, if ever. Honestly. Alright, now, perks that influence my other perk choices. When it comes to the AoE perks, we're talking about Trench Gun, we're talking about Street Sweeper. Then, first of all, there's Ghostwalker here. If I have Ghostwalker, that allows me to have a smaller detection radius, it allows me to get closer to the enemies, and this really makes positioning for a Trench Gun or a Street Sweeper so much easier in concealment. So a Ghostwalker would definitely be a perk that tells me, hey, you're a Ghostwalker, come on, pick up Trench Gun, and you're gonna be trench gunning on every single mission. Similarly then, of course, you know, if we're taking big ambush AoE attacks from concealment, then of course there's Shadow Strike. Getting a little bit expensive though then already with Ghostwalker and Shadow Strike, but if you can get that combo, heck, if you can get Bring 'em on top of that, you have a very, very strong opener on your missions. Now, it might seem like an obvious choice that then also to bring Phantom into that same boat, you know, for your once per mission ambush. So in case you kill the first group in some other way, then you still have Phantom and an ambush for the second group. I'm a little bit hesitant of having one of my strongest damage dealers remain in concealment while the rest of the group handles it. Let's say you have your typical 5-man guerrilla operations team. Your shinobi is sitting in concealment anyway, and now your assault is also sitting in concealment, and the other 3 have to handle the first group because you want to keep your concealment ambush with your assault for the second group. It can be questionable. Unless, of course, you have a super squad that has strong ambush potential and just wipes that first group with 2 attacks. So, not necessarily a huge fan of Phantom, because I think the assault needs to get in there from the get-go. Right. I think this is like the perks where I'm saying this influences my choice to pick up. Most importantly, Trench Gun, maybe also to a certain amount, and then Street Sweeper, or one of the 2. One other thing then worth looking at, I think on the Killer Instinct Assault, I said you ideally want to get to 100% crit chance. So you got to have 30% crit chance coming from somewhere in your perks. And those perks can be Anatomy or Predator. Both give 50% crit chance. Anatomy is I would say somewhat better, because it gives this to anything. While for Predator you need to be flanking the target, so of course it doesn't work against unflankable enemies. But then again, against unflankable enemies you're also losing the 40% flanking crit chance to begin with, so you need to make up way more than that. So definitely perks worth looking out for. And then I also say, if you can pick these up, then that might influence your choices, whether you go for close and personal, and whether you want to pick up aggression or rather than extra conditioning. Because if you can get a bunch of crit from this, then you don't need to get the crit from someone else. And then also this whole thing comes also back to perk choices on other soldiers. So very often when we were talking about XCOM role perks, I was saying how good Sensor Overlays is, giving 10% crit to the whole squad. And the Assault is basically the main reason for it, because they really want to get that 100% crit chance. So any crit they can get from somewhere else means that frees up their perk choices to get more raw damage or more utility, rather than having to get more crit chance. Alright, what else is here? Ready for Anything seems like a really bad perk. You shoot, you go into Overwatch. Shotgun Overwatch is not known for its accuracy. Like, maybe it's useful if the guy you shot who's next to you survived the shot and then they move. Yeah, and the other thing is also Ready for Anything requires standard shots, and the same thing is for reposition after taking a standard shot. So of course with rapid fire, if your rapid fire was your perk and you're probably rapid firing almost every single turn, those perks will not trigger to begin with. Like reposition is a really good one, usually getting a move action after a standard shot, but if you have rapid fire, they're not that great. And even if you have close encounters, you take your first shot with close encounters, assuming you shoot at a flank or exposed target, reposition triggers, and if you then take your second shot, standard shot, I'm fairly certain that the extra move action you got from reposition will just expire. So you would need to move first and then take your second shot. So careful with that. That can end up not being very, very fantastic. What else worth pointing out? Flush. We talked about the extra utility against Chosen, where you can cancel their Chosen reaction by making the move. So that's kind of some useful utility to have if you have 10 AP burning a hole in your pocket. Paramedic can be a useful repositioning tool. you know, dashing to somebody to heal them, but it only costs a single action. That being said, who's the one you would be running to? Not sure about that. That being said, though, like what makes paramedic always great and always a consideration, in my opinion, is that it gives you a free medkit on that soldier. And that basically frees up equipment slot, not so much for you, because I think your assault might not be carrying a medkit to begin with, but kind of for the squad, right? You always want to have, ideally, I want to say 2 medkits in every squad, just for safety. Just so that, normally I'd say 1 medkit, but if that guy with the medkit goes into bleed out, you want somebody else to be able to save them. So yeah, and paramedic basically gives you an extra medkit to do exactly that. Yeah, not much else. Like, most of the perks are kind of okay, you know, something like lock and load, kills, restore ammo, it's okay. At this point though, again, we're looking at 35 AP. As I mentioned, the pistol tree is there, and you probably get more value out of pistol perks over there. Deadeye, it depends on what. Again, this might influence your choice at Tech Sergeant. It makes no sense picking up Deadeye if you have rapid fire. If you have close encounters, though, you can, you know, take your first shot with close encounters and then use Deadeye on that second shot for extra damage. So that might steer you more into the close encounters territory here. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it about the XCOM Raw perks. So we're gonna call it here. 1 more class to go, the technical, coming up later this week. And then we're gonna look at the hero classes and of course Sparks and Psionics. We've got so much more ground to cover. For now, we're gonna put a cut in here though. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.